and, you know, fight off 50 supply worth of just about anything the Night Elves can throw at it. When you start getting up to 80 supply and you start getting a high-level panda involved, it doesn't work quite so well anymore. And here's kind of the late-game situation that results from it. You're going to have Madfrog and Short, you know, have both run their mains out, so they're both at a point where they need to set up another expansion. This, however, is going to kind of bring into light why I say you don't want to get into a situation as undead, and it's particularly against a Night Elf opponent, where you're trying to set up an expansion and they're trying to set up an expansion. Basically ends up being that your expansion is a lot easier to take down or harass or prevent from coming up in the first place, and their expansion, you're going to have a tougher time getting rid of it. So, and you'll see what happens is Madfrog is going to try and set up an expansion, and it's not going to hold, and Short's is. So even though things have been going well for Madfrog up until this point, they're about to get kind of ugly. Nevertheless, up until this point in the game, Madfrog's harassments and everything have gone really well. He's still taking out gold mines at this point. You know, he killed a lot of moon wells here and there. You know, the game, like, all in all, it doesn't look too bad for him. The only trouble is just that now that it's getting into the later phases of the game, that Panda's almost level 4, there's, you know, they're getting to the point where both of them have a need to set up another expansion. His gargoyles they're just really not a good thing to have at this point. Once again, here we go. He forced a TP to one Tree of Life, and it's, you know, not much of a walk from one Tree of Life to the next on this map, so his gargoyles end up getting chased off, and they also end up getting sandwiched again. This is definitely a quirk of Teneris Stan that you have got to watch out for when you were playing Undead. In this case, Madfrog's going to bring his heroes in eventually, and he's going to try and kind of get his gargoyles out of this pickle. Those few Crypt Fiends aren't really going to do anything all that good. I think Madfrog would have been really a lot better off if he'd kind of stopped building gargoyles at like maybe 50 or even like 60 supply, gotten some slaughterhouses in, and then kind of built up, you know, an Abomination Destro army with maybe a couple of meat wagons, and that's really a much better army in this late game situation. Here's going to be a good example of why I say you don't want to get into a war with the Night Elves where they're trying to expand and you're trying to expand. If you look in the lower left-hand corner, or excuse me, I'll call your attention to that in a second. This is another instance where Madfrog isn't doing too badly. He brought his heroes in to try and bust his gargoyles out of that kind of edge of the map lock that Short had him in. He's getting quite a few Dryad kills. It's, you know, things are still not going too badly for him. He's got an 80 supply army. He's reduced Short to about 60. And Short only has, let's see, Short actually has less gold than him. So, I mean, for all intents and purposes, it would kind of appear that Madfrog is winning here. Okay. But look at the lower left-hand corner of the map. Madfrog is trying to set up an expansion here. However, Short had a scouting wisp, spotted it, so he just pulled the wisp a little ways off. Once again, look at this with the Fog of the War off. And he built up an Ancient Protector, and he's going to walk that forward and take out that gold mine. Basically, all it takes for, you know, that's kind of exemplary of the situation. All it takes for the Night Elf to, you know, really harass the heck out of an undead expansion is just building a building with the scouting wisp that happened to be hanging around that mine. Madfrog doesn't, you know, he can't town portal in because he didn't want to, you know, blow the money to build a necropolis for obvious reasons. You know, even like if he sent his gargoyles in there to try and take it out, that's going to take valuable time away from harassing Short's expansion, which is, you know, now happily collecting gold. while Madfrog is trying to save his just from, being completely destroyed. If there were meat wagons and abominations and destroyers involved in this situation, it would be a different story altogether, because he could just roll right over one of the expansions in seconds. Even say, you wanted to stick with the gargs, get like 3 meat wagons, hire yourself a zeppelin, and you can go ahead, bring your gargoyles in, and drop the meat wagons on the ground with them. That way you can take down this Tree of Life really, really, really fast. And also because of the zeppelin, you have a way of having your meat wagons hopefully escape unscathed, because for anybody that's ever tried to use meat wagons, they are really, really, really freaking weak. He also added a Frostworm. That's a good pick against bears. This is kind of the killer battle here, though. He's not that well prepared for it. He's only got 1 scroll of healing. If he had more like 3, he might be okay. You can't... it's kind of hard at this point, although he does sort of manage. He's not really going to be able to focus fire very well with his gargoyles, because the battle is so big and there are so many units involved. Now here we see, because this was such a big battle, his gargoyles just start to run out of life. He doesn't have another healing scroll to save him. If he did, he might be able to hang on a little bit longer, but even then I think he'd still get overwhelmed. And he's lost the game at this point. He doesn't have an expansion up, in addition to his 1 gold mine that has only got 2,000 left in it. And, his army just got owned. All he's got here is crypts and a boneyard, which aren't really going to do anything to counter that, still fairly substantial group of dryads that Short has. So point is, I think, Madfrog, I heard it kind of sort of through the grapevine. I might be totally wrong about this. My understanding is he actually hasn't had an internet connection lately. And so I think basically he's a little out of practice, and I think he's kind of behind the strategy curve. He hadn't, I guess, adjusted to the fact that Night Elf players have gotten so good at countering gargoyles. I think you're either going to see him adopting some new micromanagement tricks that are going to keep him alive longer, or he's probably going to switch to some other strategy, because, hey, pros adapt. They do what works till it stops working, and then they find something else. That's really the end of it. Pretty much the rest of this game is really just Madfrog being kind of finished off. So I'm going to go ahead and end the audio commentary here. I hope you've enjoyed this, or at least found it informative. As always, my forum account is Fray, regardless of whether or not this gets posted on the site. I'm sure I will at least put it on the member audio commentaries, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, positive, negative, neutral, whatever you have to say. This is Fray, signing off. How's that for a dated pop culture reference? I'm really aging myself here. How many of you have actually even seen Wayne's World or know what the hell it is? I know I'm a little bit older than most of the average listeners for this stuff, but okay, well, for those of you that don't know, that guy Mike Myers, that he's Austin Powers and all the other people in Austin Powers and just stuff. Well, before Austin Powers, there was this Saturday Night Live sketch called Wayne's World that was, pretty popular, and it became a movie, and it was Mike Myers and this other guy, Dana Carvey, who at the time everybody thought was a lot funnier than Mike Myers, and he was the real comic genius, and Mike Myers was, he was funny too. But I don't know what the hell happened to Dana Carvey. Either he retired or got washed up or both. I don't know. Anyway, the little doodle sound was something that anytime that they were doing a flashback, they would make that noise with their mouth, just like I did. It was funny, I swear. I remember listening to the soundtrack to the Wayne's World movies, because they had Queen and other cool rock bands on it and stuff. Back in 1990, one or whatever. You know, I remember listening to that while like playing basketball with my friends amidst music from other early 90s pop cultural icons like MC Hammer and Criss Cross. What the hell was wrong with us? I will see you guys in a couple of weeks. I've been working on another audio that particularly focuses on like the undead base build. So I have been wanting to do a lot of research into like really how the buildings interact and what kind of units they block and what are good base builds in general, other than just saying this base build is nice, copy it. So I think it's going to be worth the wait on that one. Anyway, I'll see you guys in a couple of weeks. This is Fray signing off.